Charter Review Commission meeting, Wednesday, July 5, 2023. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Summer,
Present?
McDonald,
Here.
Casey,
Here.
Latham,
Here.
Allender,
Here.
DeHart,
Present.
Frakes,
Here.
Waters,
Here.
Still,
Here.
Boatright,
Here.
Okay. We have one absent, one appearing by teams, so we do have a quorum tonight. Next on the agenda, approval of the June 21, 2023 minutes. Anyone have any comments about those?
Make a motion, we accept. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any announcements?
Happy birthday, Mr. Butler. Thank you. I make 65 look good.
I was gonna ask you, they over 64 and a half.
With all the phone calls I've been getting, I can tell you.
Any from city staff? No announcements? Okay. All right, we're ready to get started on our review. Mr. Head did give us a handout a little bit ago. He did a sort of a rough draft of the changes for 6.6 and a few other sections after that, correct? Do you want to go ahead and explain that to us? I'll put it up on the screen.
I removed everything that made reference to primary elections, and then we added some language. One second, thanks. Oh yeah, we removed the forms and just left in the information that we'd like to see on the forms. And that information I put in bullet points there. That was just taken directly out of the charter and put as a list so that it could be more easily seen. We added some language to say that the forms were the responsibility of the city clerk, and they are going to decide how they should look, or I think that's what was decided at the last meeting, right? And then there was some language that Jeremy had asked me to put in, and I think it's required by statute that candidates submit an affidavit that say they're not delinquent on any state or local taxes. And so we've added that in there as well. And I believe that's all the changes.
Okay, so one of the forms, and I can't remember the name of it, but it did have within it some items that would cause a candidate to be excluded, correct? And so you've incorporated those into charter language since we don't have the form anymore?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
In reading through the forms, I think everything that was required in the forms was listed in the language of the charter. And so I just made sure to bring that out in the list that I provided. Okay. But everything that was in the form should still be on this list. I don't know specifically what you are referring to that might have them be excluded.
It was in the acceptance of candidacy. No, hold on.
We're talking about the tax delinquency?
Yes.
Yeah, page 3.
Well, we've added that tax delinquency language to section 6.13 of it.
It's not on here, but it's up on the screen. And that language came from the state statute, correct?
Yes.
So you've added
Except this-
6.13.
the sections where it says, city election, I believe, in the statute it said public election,
Okay,
or some language like that. We changed it to say the word city instead of public, I believe.
so when I don't recall if we discussed this or not, but it was something that I was thinking of when I reviewed it again for this meeting. So a candidate for office can't be delinquent on taxes, can't have a fee office that owes taxes. Another thing that I thought of, and I don't know if this is in the code or not, but I would think we would want to restrict anyone who has a property that has a code violation. Is that in the code of ordinances somewhere?
I don't know if that's in the code of ordinances, and I didn't see it referenced in the statute, but we could include that in there.
I just throw that out for discussion,
Code violation.
that owns property that has a code violation.
If a guy wants to run for something, and I mean, he could be a slumlord.
Right.
Well, aren't they all now? What about, I'm totally beat that. So,
He's had a cupcake, he's feeling good.
yeah, sugar rush here. Just need a Mountain Dew. We'll end the night. Anyway, I mean, is that legit? A code violation? Is it something they would be challenging and say, hey, you haven't found me guilty of this. You just say my yard looks like crap or my building. Is it something that they've been, wouldn't call it convicted of?
All right. I'm just
I
offering
gotcha.
that up for discussion.
Do you know how it's addressed in other?
I'm not trying to let just I got the part about somebody that's got a, what you're saying there, but I think that we probably should be careful about whether it's something they've been convicted of, not addressed, or just anybody can, you were out of town for a few weeks or in the hospital and your grass wasn't mowed. I think that we're talking codes, you know what I mean? That's a wide range.
Yeah, we are. And when I'm picturing in my mind exactly what you described, some kind of a nuisance
Nuisance.
on property that they own.
I gotcha.
Does anyone else have any opinion on that? Or should we maybe recommend to the council that they may want to look at that without adding it to the charter?
Has that been addressed in our neighboring jurisdictions? Does anybody know? Is there something in there about qualifications, and that's one of the?
Because I remember when a congressman ran for his seat, he was several years behind on business taxes, but as soon as he got elected, magically they came zero down. So I'm not saying, I'm trying to think of what we're following a template of the state or city. Or are we, is what I'm getting at, because a lot of times they get out there and, man, I'm a couple of years behind and now it's zero when the votes are counted.
Right.
So I don't,
In my past city of Sugar Creek, when I was administrator, the only thing we had was the taxes we went by the state.
That's all I've really ever.
Yeah.
But I see your point too about a code violation.
I do too. To that standpoint, but what I mean is there a range of codes? Is there something that says unaddressed? What if they send you a code violation and you fix it? That's what I'm getting at. That's all.
That's a good point.
Could be an ongoing code issue.
Or a code issue that hasn't been resolved.
Yeah, unaddressed code issue. That's I totally got that part, but I just meant politics is nowadays is
Code violation, that made a lot of people use that.
that's what I'm saying. So my yard isn't mowed. I just don't. I think that we should take a little more defined
Okay.
probably unresolved, unaddressed, possibly use that word.
Like I said, it may be something that we don't want to put in the charter.
But we
It
don't
just
want
occurred
slumlord
to me
either.
when I was
I got you.
reading through this that,
Well, I could see when somebody's running for office, if they've got a code problem, their opponent is gonna bring that up
Right.
quite a lot. So I just don't know about putting that in the charter. The taxes thing, yes, that's extremely important, but
okay. I mean, I'm fine with letting that.
I'm,
That go.
you know, I mean, I think that I think we're on path to say that, unresolved or, let's see, unaddressed code violation.
You want to just make a note in our memo that we're going to send to the city council that this came up. We decided not to put it in the charter, but we want to just bring it to your attention. Is
Sure.
that something that,
Yeah.
that we discussed?
yeah, so
We'll
we
do
don't,
that.
so we don't lose the idea.
Right.
Okay. Lindsay, can you just make a note of that?
One thing I might mention is if code violations go too long, the city can levy a special assessment against that property. And then that would in turn lead to it being an outstanding tax that that candidate would have.
Okay.
Just to, if it gets too far, it will turn into this tax situation.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might turn into this
Right,
tax situation that would prevent them.
Okay. Okay, does anyone else have any,
I just noticed in
Comment?
6-7 withdrawal, second paragraph that mentioned,
can you turn your microphone on?
Nick's not here.
okay, 6-7, second paragraph, it mentions, should death, incompetency, removal from the city or any other disqualifying condition occur to any successful primary candidate. And of course, we have eliminated that.
I missed.
Yeah, but I've kind of brought it up because Bruce, I'm going to say I've reconsidered my position on this primary, and I vote with you. I would vote with you now. I really rethought that position, and I think a primary is important.
You do think the primary is
I
important?
do. But I mean, I understand there was a vote, and I think you were the only dissenter. But I'm just letting you know that I've reconsidered, and I think you had valid points.
John, that's interesting that you brought that up because one of the things I wanted to do tonight was to see about re-examining that question. And I'm thinking out loud here, so please help me. Can this commission create a subcommittee that can meet in order to study and then come back to this commission with a report? And is that subject to sunshine?
No. It would be subject to sunshine law, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
If a subcommittee was created within this body, just to work on
Primary language.
primary, if we want to keep primary in the charter, and then if it was to report back to this,
Yeah, I think
Commission?
that would be subject to open records, the
Yeah.
sunshine request.
it is.
Does that mean that the meeting would have to be
Public.
public?
It
And
would have to be.
so,
Have to
okay,
announce it.
so, okay. Well, I just think that the issue needs some more discussion. I agree with that. I'm not announcing any side. I just think it needs a little bit more discussion and maybe more than we can accomplish in a bigger group. Maybe not. Maybe we can handle it here, but
So, if I'm correct, we're on 6-7, John, correct?
Right.
And you're talking about should death, incompetency, or removal from the city and other disqualifying condition occur to any successful primary candidate between the primary and the general election, there shall be no opening of the election and the surviving candidate shall be declared the winner.
Well, And of course, the issue is, at some prior meeting, we voted that there would no longer be primary elections, so this paragraph would not be appropriate. But if we did.
I see what you, okay.
We're not
but
just
if we
talking
did,
about this.
if it
I
was-
understand
If
6,
it were
7.
down to 2 candidates, and basically this paragraph saying that if someone backs out for whatever reason, then the remaining candidate would be,
The second highest vote getter would be fill the opening.
Yes.
So I really don't have a problem with that if there is a primary.
I understand.
And as I said earlier, I rethought my position on that.
Madam Chairman?
Well, do we want to, at this point in this meeting, readdress whether to have a primary election or not?
I would be in
I
favor
think
of
we
that.
need a motion from someone who voted to remove it. And then we would vote on that. If that passes, then we would go forward with a discussion on it. So the motion would be to reconsider removing the primary election from the charter.
I would make that motion. I don't think I need to repeat what you just said, Jackie, but I would make.
Okay,
Hold on, try.
There's a motion to
Oh, try.
motion to reconsider. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, call a roll call?
Summer,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Casey,
No.
Latham,
Yes.
Allender,
I think I'm voting yes. That means to reconsider, correct?
That's to reconsider, right?
Yes.
DeHart,
Yes.
Frakes,
Yes.
Waters,
Yes.
Steele,
Yes.
Boatright.
Yes.
It passes.
Okay. I'll open the discussion up to, I think first I'd like to hear from someone who originally voted yes to remove that and now may have some other second thoughts about it.
Well, I admit the first time around, I was a fence rider.
Can you-
I was.
You want to talk into your mic?
Okay, excuse me. I was a fence rider, then I went along with the majority, but
Now playing the part of Nick, let's vote for him.
that's right, Nick has been helping me, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I've just rethought that. I've noticed a letter from a citizen, and that was one of their points they brought up, and anyway, I believe too that whoever we elect should receive at least 50% of the vote. I don't like the idea of having 10 candidates and someone that maybe gets 25% of the votes ends up being elected to whatever position that is. I don't like that idea.
I mean, that was my argument, and the reason for the dissent is that first, I think the math in my head, is if what I stated that day was if somebody is always getting the same 400 or 500 votes, they can be a candidate 10 times to keep one person from getting there. I think a primary helps. You know, obviously 20 people can run in their primary. But I think that once the primary is, that was my dissent, is why I said no. And I think that names can be floated just to do it rather than the true integrity of running. And I believe that was my biggest thing. And it's been that way, I think we discussed for as long as we've been a municipality. But anyway, I won't go on. We knew what my argument, where my dissent was, but I think it's important that way. What you're saying is you don't have 10 and then somebody just, there could be always in control certain neighborhood, certain just section keeps peeling away from a true candidate is what I mean by that. And that's where I'm at with that.
I think that we probably could all agree that that's the biggest concern. That a candidate can be elected with a very, very small percentage of the voters, potentially. And maybe that trumps everything. I don't know. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and this is why I thought maybe a subcommittee maybe could do a little more research. Why is Independence one of the few municipalities in the state that conducts primaries? And how do the other cities get around coming up with this kind of results, potential results? And that's kind of big. I mean, there are thousands of municipalities in the state, and very few of them do a primary. What are we missing? Why? Now we're what, the 5th biggest in the state, so we're a big city, big town. So maybe that is the key. But I can't imagine that our voters are any more or less important than any other city.
So I think as I was involved in the Kansas City government, the Kansas City board or city council. And I don't think theirs is called a primary, but once the primary election's over, it's the top 2 voters.
Put your mic on, please.
The top 2 voters are on the ballot at that point.
Right?
And that is not a primary, in its description. But they had 5 or 6 people running for certain district council seats. And on April, whatever day it was the top 2 in each one. It's not called a primary, but there's the 2 top getters. That's the same thing.
But then they go on to a general
That's
election.
right.
Okay, so
That's exactly how they did it. So we're kind of comparing, I think, if you look at, it's not described, but like in Blue Springs, if you look, Lee Summit, it's the same. They don't have primary language, but the top 2 vote getters,
I don't
that's
think
not
so.
correct? Okay.
No, there's just a general election.
When we talked about this before, not to put Zach on the spot, but I know you had some statistics that you shared with us about primaries from some of our other communities around. And it seemed real clear to me at the time when we were listening to this that why are we doing a primary when no one else is doing it? And I felt like I was doing the math in my head, and I felt like the only way we would come out to a different solution is if we had, for instance, 4 people running or say 5 people running and in a primary, and of course, the top 2 go forward. Great. Well, isn't it the same thing except for people who voted for candidate number 3, 4, and 5 need to place their vote? They have to force them to vote for candidate 1 or 2. And the only way that candidate 1 or 2 would flip is if everyone, jumped on the bandwagon for the number 2 spot, right?
Yes, but we went into the statistics we talked about the cost of it.
Right.
And we talked about the Jackson County Election Board. And we went over the dates, the first Tuesday after the first, all that stuff that came has been that way for 100 years. The first, Tuesday after the first Monday. We talked about the primary being obsolete or deleted because of the cost, I think.
That was one.
Zach,
One,
do
it was
you have
one thing.
any-
That's one part of it.
Right.
But I also think that we're forgetting, we just experienced this when, God rest her soul, Karen Belusi passed away. How long did it take to get another person back in office? We had to go through a primary that really wasn't a primary. I mean, we all knew what was going to happen. And then we had to go through a general election. Folks, I think it's much more important to be able to have people on the board actively managing our city than even the costs associated with it. On top of that, and I sound like I'm selling something, and I don't know why, but I am, that we're the only city, one of 3 cities in the entire state that have a primary. That has to tell us something. I'm still trying to understand the logic between, John, I know that you kind of went the other way. I'd like to know what your reasoning for.
It's real simple in my
Make it more simple, please.
For my mind.
Okay.
Microphone.
It's using my example, it may be an extreme example, but if someone, number of candidates and someone gets elected from 25% of the vote, I mean, you can't extrapolate that to say 75% of the people in Independence didn't want that person. But the other side of it is this person elected for 25% of the vote. Does that person represent his district or the city with 25% of the vote? I hardly think so. I would like to think that the person who's elected has at least 50% of the citizens of Independence that at least cast their ballot for that person.
I can't argue the fact that on percentage basis, you're absolutely correct. But on a numeric basis, it just doesn't add up.
What do you mean merit basis? You lost me.
Numerical basis.
Oh, numerical basis.
Yes, the top vote getter should be the winner. This is how I see it. And it may not be a percentage that says that you're at 51% or 52% or what have you, but it does say that you were the top vote getter. We're talking about, what do we have, 10,000 votes for a mayor election? I mean, for out of a town that has, I don't know how many registered voters, but it is a dismal reflection.
Whether the voters
knock
come
out
out
our
and vote or
city
not really isn't an issue. I mean,
primaries
whether-
because people.
Oh, go ahead.
voter apathy doesn't even enter
That's
into
exactly
my discussion as far as
Okay.
I'm concerned.
It does mine. So, okay.
Well, I guess I'm apathetic to your position.
It's hard to say that we don't agree on something.
I want to make just a comment about the concern that there might be 10 candidates for an office. We kept the petition process in the charter. Each candidate has to go out and for council has to go out and get 100 signatures of registered voters in their district. If we had 10 candidates for district, I don't know what the smallest district is, but I'll just say 2. I don't know. That's a lot of signatures. I think that process alone is going to weed out casual candidates.
We shouldn't be eliminating election processes because people don't exercise their right as a citizen. That's the first thing. The second part of it is we have in the code of ethics, if there is a vacancy, that the city council can fill it until the following time. Is that right or wrong? We just dumped it over there, which is in the code of ethics. If there is a DeLucci scenario, they can fill that by the council to do the business of the city.
And
Right?
That's not what I'm talking
I got
about, though.
that
I'm
part,
just,
but isn't that what we've done to the code of ethics? When you're saying that it might be rough to go get 6 or 7 people in one district to get 100 signatures, and then we're saying that just because people don't vote, that's a waste of money. I find that
I
absolutely not
understand
right.
that.
That's
I understand that point. I'm just trying to say, personally, I think the petitioning process is burdensome. I think it discourages, I think we should have as many people running as want to run, personally. But I think we do need serious candidates. And I think this petition process is going to require someone is serious enough to go and knock on doors, or however they do it, and get a signature, and it can only be a registered voter, and they can only sign for one petition for one candidate, according to the language of our charter. So I just think that is sort of, I don't know any other, we may have discussed this, but I don't know offhand of any other city that has that petition process. Did Kansas City, I think? But none of the smaller towns around here.
And there are more qualifications too. You have to, in the case of a council person, you have to live in that district, right? You have to,
Yeah.
There are some qualifications that help eliminate any fly-by-the-night candidate, which isn't good for, that's not good for anybody, right? I think there's another consideration though, that we have to think about when it comes to primaries, and that is, we do have to consider that the very low voter turnout, not just because it's a low turnout, but the reasoning for it. I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to primaries over local versus national versus party, because primaries sound and mirror party politics and party primaries. I think that confuses a lot of voters. So I think that's another reason not to have one. But again, does that outweigh this thought of not having an election that mirrors the want of the voters?
Well, I've never called the fire department. Well, maybe we ought to just quit funding them too.
Say that again.
I've never called the fire department. Maybe we should just quit funding them also. I'm just talking about somebody says, there's very few people that did it, so let's delete it. There's very few people participated. And then you go, well, look at the cost. Well, that's still your God-given right as a non-convicted felon that you get to vote. So
No,
I'm saying I haven't called the fire department more than once, and I got to pay for all that.
No, I don't
I've
think
never
that
called
that's
them,
the
but my
line.
part is I'm just starting to say, well, we only have this many thousands of people vote, like we ought to dump it.
No, the line of reasoning is to promote where voters spend more time. It's that's looking at the positive side versus the. I'm not trying to promote the negative
I
side.
thought the argument was the cost, weighing that regarding what we're giving up. I thought that was the issue.
Not the issue. That was just one
It's
of
the way Jackson
several.
County in their letter approached it from a cost standpoint, because they talked about 17 jurisdictions in Jackson County. There's only 3 that do primaries,
Understand.
and their focus was on election costs.
Well, exactly.
It's all born, so.
I thought that was the issue, election
Well,
costs
it's
versus.
one thing we looked at when we discussed it, but I don't think it was the only thing people based on, but it was interesting to see the costs and what have to be done.
The expense is one. The fact that very few cities in the state do it is two. It's the time frame. I think Mark, you're right. Time frame is a issue. It's also not only expensive to the city, but also to candidates.
Yes.
Right, that's an issue. And then I add the fourth one, and that is the confusion and / low turnout for primaries. I'm not saying we don't eliminate because not a few people go out. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying that
So you're saying like the people don't feel that's as important
even
because it's a primary?
That's a great way to say it. Thank you.
Okay.
But did those 4 reasons trump potentially electing someone with, say, 11% of the voters?
Yes.
It does. That trumps it.
No, the part about having somebody with the least amount of votes divided over 6, 5, 4, 6, 7 people is, I think the primary trumps any part of that. To have it into a 2-person race. How long we've been doing it, and I think Mr. City Manager, they kept referring to you for some statistics, but I don't know that there's confusion. I know that you talk about the last 2 candidates for mayor were both Democrats. Their own, claim.
Yeah.
But if the top two vote getters in the race and a write-in, but I don't think because of low turnout, and I don't think because of the cost. The people that count and verify the petitions, will they do it for free? Are there people on the clock doing that to verify signatures?
I'm sure they don't do it for free.
So, we're still looking at, that's kind of where I was at with it. Is it gonna be the cost of a primary that goes to the Jackson County electorate? No. We're certainly not wiping out the cost of people have to go check out 15 or 12, 13,000 signatures and verify the address. And 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, in my opinion.
On the petition
Sure.
process?
I just don't think low turnout. So
And
that should be.
I'm looking for it now, but the model charter addressed that, and that's why I'm looking to find that.
Section's that under.
It starts on page 43 of the model charter. Elections.
Yeah, we talked about the ranked choice voting, which I think the city clerk was here and spoke to that and said that nobody thought that that was really a good idea, at least in Kansas City and
They
only
do
one
address
place
that,
in the state of Missouri, yeah.
where evidence suggests turnout is higher during state and national elections. And so they were talking about moving the locals to coincide so that we do get
That may
that
have been
better
what I was-
turnout. Mhm.
That may have been it.
Yeah. Zach, when we talked about this before, I feel like you mentioned maybe Blue Springs that ran into some kind of an election where the candidates that ended up were just nip and tuck. Am I making that up, or did you
No,
say that?
you're recalling correctly, and I don't have that data in front of me at the moment, but I was specifically referring to the last mayoral race in Blue Springs, in which there were multiple candidates, and none of them received plurality, and several of them were within, as you said, just a few percentage points of one another. So, it really boils down to, do you value the efficiency of having one election and getting that done, and the cost savings, the time savings, et cetera, or do you value a clear and concise outcome in which somebody received at least 50% of the vote instead of 25 here and 10 there and 17 there, and nobody really ever eclipsed that majority mark. So, and that's not me weighing in, that's just trying to help this group, this body
The
formulate.
only way they could get a majority is forcing people who didn't select it the first time to pick one.
Mhm.
So it's still not the pick of the people anyway, you're forcing them.
Well,
You-
theoretically, you still could have a general election where the winner didn't have 51% if you had write-ins.
That's the very interesting, and that's been a reality the last couple of elections. There have been write-in candidates declared, and I think the last several city attorneys have breathed a sigh of relief that they didn't have to, because the charter right now does not contemplate a write-in candidate. But conceivably, yes, you could have 10 individuals decide to declare a write-in candidacy and still not have a clear 50%, as you say.
I don't know that it's a 50%, 50 or 51, it's the majority of votes in the election. I think out of the two, if talking about a primary, out of the two, whoever has the most votes. But when we're talking 25%, 17%, 11%, my part is a primary is gonna dissolve the 10%, and you're gonna pick the two that the biggest
departments came. It's been that way in state, city.
So Bruce, I want to see if I can wrap my head around this. This addresses the difference that you had, okay? If you have, let's just say you have 10 candidates. If you had no primary, it's potential, and tell me if I'm doing this math wrong, or right. Worst case scenario is 11% could win. Isn't that right? So 11% could win if there was no primary. If you have the same 10 candidates run through a primary, the top two still could have 11 and 10% of the vote to get to that general. Now, at that point, you're right, the voters are then going to have to determine a majority winner, and the majority would win. But the numbers and the math still says that 89% of the voters are not happy, potentially, worst case scenario, with our official.
And the only way that would flip is if those number 3 through 10 perhaps went more for candidate 2. That'd be the only time where number 1, you know, in your second scenario there.
Yeah.
That to me, that's the only risk you would have, if that would happen.
Is that I mean, that's what
Yeah,
what it comes down to is the worst case scenario is
It's the same.
it's the same in both cases.
I think we went over the numbers too. When was the last time someone died between a primary and the swearing in? Was it just the one time that we know of?
That's the only one I'm familiar with.
Is there any further discussion on that? I mean, we do have one person absent today. Do we want to go ahead and vote, take a second vote on it? Wait for him? No, we don't have someone, may have someone absent at the next meeting also. Or postpone it for more.
Well, I just want to say something else. It's kind of, I'm maybe smart, I like it so. But at least you have the choice between rat number 1 and rat number 2. If you had that. So there's still a choice. Okay.
You still got the same choices you had when you had 10 candidates. Got 2 people in the race. You wouldn't even get it.
We've cost everybody a lot more time and money to come up with the same results. I think that's what the other cities have found. I don't know, I'm still, honest to goodness, I'm still confused a little bit on this issue. Both sides make sense. I'm just trying to figure out why our neighbors have figured it out, or maybe we've figured it out all along. Maybe we've been doing it right all along, and they have
I
issues.
think that's probably, I think the latter is probably correct. The latter of what you said.
Yeah.
You know, it's in every election in the country.
What do you mean?
State reps, governors, you have primaries, presidents now get elected. They take office with the least amount of votes than their opponent. And then we're gonna copy the rest of everybody's stuff here in Independence for.
Well, you're talking about all primaries. I mean,
Well, I'm talking about the election cycle. You're gonna have one anyway, and it was worded to basically roll with your nationals, where Jackson County runs the elections, and we have the cost of the primary. That's still where I'm at with it. I like the system. And the money's spent elsewhere.
before we, personally, my opinion here, before we would move to consider any vote, I'd still like to find out if we could get a little bit more information from other cities.
On how they think their election system works, or why they, I don't know, that some of these charters are very old, or if they have some sort of
They have the
record.
reasoning for it.
Yeah, what the record was back.
Well, I would love,
then.
I guess I'd love to find out how many cities come across this scenario where they have 10 candidates or 8 or, too many. I guess that's bottom line. It's,
There was, just as an example, like in Kansas City, there was 6 candidates in District 6. And the top 2 on the primary.
but they do a primary.
The top was top. It's not so much a primary for party affiliate. It's just the top 2 vote getters, and the other 4 are off. We're off of it.
Do you know what
Then you
Springfield
gather,
is?
they gather that support.
Yeah, some of the other larger, I think when we look, Springfield, Columbia, I forget the others that come immediately to mind, but they were just having one race.
As
Yeah.
you know.
Just, yeah, whoever was filed ran. I don't remember all these for certain. I remember Columbia specifically because they're the city next highest us in population. They required for their district races at least 50 signatures, but no more than 75, which was kind of a weird caveat. And then for the citywide races, at least 100, but no more than 150. So our threshold's higher for those, but yes, they're just having one race.
And then I think the other statistic, and again, not to be draggled the money piece of it, but the last election, I think you said had 8,800 people that voted, and the cost was $90-some thousand.
I thought it was in the 60s, and it was about 10,000, I think. You're,
I don't know. I don't know.
This says like August 2nd, primary election, 61,000. It doesn't say numbers. In February 8th of 2022, primary election, $206,000. February 4th of 2020, primary election, $98,000.
for this city?
This city. It just didn't say how many people voted, but, you're looking at $360,000 in those 3 elections alone.
And they run every 2 years.
Well, this was February of 2020, the last 2, February 8th of 2022 and August 2nd of 2022. So they had 2, that 1 year.
Would a hybrid approach be of any value here, or would a number trigger a change? So for example, if 5 candidates filed, no primary, if 6 candidates filed, that triggers a primary? Is that a potential solution?
No, I think that might lead to someone arbitrarily just voting or just entering the election to force a primary
Could be.
election.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think through
I know.
the process there, the manipulation potential, yeah.
Just to throw this out, and I think we decided ranked choice voting isn't allowed in Missouri yet.
That's what Jeremy said last time we discussed it, yeah.
But I'm thinking about the Senate election, U.S. Senate election, was it Georgia, where it was sort of a runoff because neither of the top 2 candidates had 50%. Just throwing that out. That's
And that-
probably
yeah,
not allowed
that's-
in Missouri either.
That's nowhere else. That's their own personal pick. Like I said, the last couple of presidential elections, the guy that got the least amount of votes took office, and was, you know, the brothers were controlling electorates and all this other stuff. Electoral college was, if you go talk about it, it's about 150 years old when they went on horse and buggies and didn't quite make it in there. Now it's soaked up to cover whoever gets the least amount of votes gets in there, and that's what I see as a trickle of. You got the same 6 candidates. I mean, you heard, you know,
You know, to be a citizen confidence, I mean, I don't have any statistics on this. I am kind of curious. You know, when you talk about Blue Springs, and they have someone elected that gets a small percentage vote. I mean, what's the citizen's confidence in their elected officials if that's the way it is? I wouldn't have much confidence.
yeah, and the who gets held accountable too. Well, I didn't vote for that guy. You know what I mean? There's kind of a, you know, the buck stops here crap. It's kind of,
Yeah.
just
You don't
carved
think-
up as far as I'm concerned.
But that's what I'm really talking about.
Do you think that goes away though when the voter's second choice then gets elected? Because
I don't know how you say so.
Because if that's what you're saying, if my guy didn't get past the primary, then I'm forced to vote for somebody else.
Well, I don't think
Like you do in every other election.
forced to
Yeah.
vote.
Or they don't go vote.
But, you know,
Or they don't vote.
That
but,
creates
you know,
a lower
I voted
turnout.
for candidates that didn't get elected,
Mhm.
and I voted in primaries where the person I voted for didn't get the win. Then I would vote in the general election who I thought was a better candidate.
That's
at that
exactly
point.
Right.
That's why it goes all over the whole country.
So, but I mean, if you're talking about someone that gets elected with, and I know that's you did that example for the purpose of the discussion, but someone got elected with 11% of the vote, do they have citizen confidence? I would doubt that, Tom.
Yeah.
I guess the way I see it is what it is. If you only get so many votes, the person with the top votes wins. I mean, anything other than that, you're gonna be forcing people into a less than favorable candidate in their mind. I think Tom said it very well. You got 11%, so 89% of the folks are gonna be unhappy with the candidate. And you've also spent all that money going through this charade.
It's not a charade. It comes out with 2 of the top candidates is what it comes out with. And those candidates have to work with their remaining voters. Okay, Terry didn't get all these votes. I'd like to come and plead my case to you. We're the top 2 guys. Here's your choices. And I want you to recognize why I would be the best one, not just I want the guy that got the least amount of votes. It's not a charade. It's been going on for 100 years. Is that what we discussed earlier by the statistics? The top 2 vote getters go to the election. And if the guys that got 8 and 9 and 12%, the other ones got 22 and 11, those 2 guys get to try to work on the rest of the votes. It's been that way. It's that way presidential, that way Senate, it's that way state rep, it's that way governor. And it costs money. But where else do you cut money from other than Independence being a little different and a standalone municipality?
Well, I think we need to either vote or table it for additional information, if that's what the commission would like. We need to be pretty specific about what it is we're looking for from the staff, if we need additional information.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this. I feel like that I know we've discussed a lot, but I think it could use some more discussion, maybe a little bit more information. I think we'd be doing a disservice if we voted one way or another tonight. So my motion is to table it.
I'll second that.
Do we have a date to table it to?
I would
I
say
think,
the next meeting.
2 more
I think the
meetings?
proper motion is to postpone it until the
Postpone it?
To postpone, okay.
for the next meeting.
Okay,
Until a
and
date certain in the future.
any discussion about that? I think we need to make it, clear to our city staff that's here, what information you'd like from other jurisdictions,
What else are we looking for?
right?
I tell you what I'm gonna do, I'm not
This is Carmen speaking up here in the clouds. For my, I'd be curious if there's any way, it's probably an estimate, but to put some monetary value if when we just experienced this, was there any opportunity cost to the city for having delay of operation of any kind? And again, I'm just curious because I don't know, waiting for the waiting for the primary to occur, looking for more efficient side of the argument, would that have allowed the city to have a more efficient operation if we did not have a primary? I'd be curious to hear that.
So if I may, I think your question is when we had when Delucci, we had a death, did it hold up any business of the city in that particular cycle? Is that your question?
She's frozen.
Because that was mayor, that was the whole thing, and it was delayed based on.
Use your mic too.
Did you hear me? I think she froze up.
I don't think she said primary. I think it was plum managers.
I think the question is, did the process when we had the unfortunate death of Councilmember Delucci, did that cause any delays, problems, costs at the city level? And then I believe it's been asked, do we know of any cities that do not have a primary that kind of wish they did, maybe? But I don't know how you would get that information. I don't know who would make that call for a city. Maybe just if anyone's ever stated it on online and it shows up somewhere.
I guess the question too would be, we've been talking about not having the primary and, low voter turnout on the candidates we get. How do these other cities justify that?
Right.
That don't have a primary? I mean, are there any concerns that they have for that? Are they even relooking at changing their process? Maybe?
Yeah, that may be the information that we're talking about.
Okay.
Is, I mean, Columbia and Springfield, great examples. They don't have primaries. I'd love to take a look at the last decade. Let's say decade of elections. How many candidates filed? What was the percentage of voters, turnout, the election results?
How many candidates?
How many? Yes, yeah, definitely. How many candidates? Yeah.
One of my close friends was the mayor for 8 years in Columbia.
Okay.
I will gather that.
Okay.
And he is our political director for all of labor in Jeff Cities, who I work with, and can get me right down to it, the pros and cons of it. That's one of the sharpest minds I've ever met in that. So Brian Treese was the mayor for 2 full terms, and I will talk with him tomorrow during the day.
Okay, if you get
And get a
anything, would
little
you?
info, get a little feedback on whether he, liked it, didn't.
Okay.
Not recommendation so much, but I'm talking about what, his personal thoughts.
So you'll need to send that to Lindsay
I would.
when you get it, and make sure he knows that is going to be sent to her
Okay.
when you talk to him. Okay. And
Is there
I'm,
another
And you know the
clearinghouse?
mayor of Blue Springs, right?
I mean, I'm just,
Is there a data
Yeah.
source for this information? Is there a data source for elections in the state that we could look at cities of a certain size?
My first thought would be to just reach out to the county election commission and see
oh, that's a good idea.
We'll see what they
what data they would have.
Yeah, because I'm looking at, I just pulled up the 2020 Blue Springs mayor election results, and Mayor Ross won with 34.3%. There were 4 candidates. 2 of them were, 3 of the other 3 were council members or former council members.
Well, in Columbia, I looked it up while we were here, and the person you talked about was listed, didn't run, but there were 3 people that ran. Top vote getter got like 43%,
In Columbia?
in Columbia. So there was another almost 60% that weren't happy that their candidate didn't win, but so they got elected with 43.
I think when Brian ran, he won pretty over the.
Yeah, this was said he was the mayor. Now there's a woman that.
See, that's really interesting to me that we're looking at these cities who are electing their officials with 30-40%. We're mandating that somebody's going to get 50 plus. Are there cities working any less efficiently? What are we missing?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good points. Okay, so we are going to postpone this 1 meeting, 2 meetings? And we'll have to do a lot of changes if we decide to put primary back in.
Yeah,
To the
don't
charter.
throw away all your primary notes.
Yeah,
We took it
yeah.
out, save that.
So how, do you want to go out 2 meetings or just,
I originally said 2 meetings, just thinking it's gonna take a while to collect some of this data and to do it just in 2 weeks. But I don't know, can we do that? Do we specify a date? Do we specify a meeting?
but Mr. McDonald, you're not going to be here August,
Do they,
2 meetings.
do
You won't
they
be
do any
here.
surveys on citizen satisfaction for eliminating primaries? Does anybody have any ideas about that, Bruce?
What's that?
Is there any data about citizen satisfaction with, eliminating primary
That
elections?
costs too much money to find out.
Oh.
I'm teasing. I don't know. for sure.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know whether there's, you know what I mean, like I didn't like it that we didn't, I don't know. I couldn't tell you whether their participation is lower because of what he's saying is because you don't get to vote for your own guy or whether people just really don't care. Your own candidate. So I don't know that really.
Well, Mr. McDonald will be absent in 2 weeks.
No,
Would you?
I'll be here in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's,
When is
Well,
August 1st?
In 2 meetings.
Yes,
I'm sorry, he won't be here. So
Yes,
do
I
you
don't
want to be here for that vote?
I'm gonna be going to Alaska.
Do you want to be here for that vote if we
Yes, I
vote on
do.
it again?
So let's just go to Alaska with you.
By the 18th.
You can go for me.
Madam Chair, whoa, here we go. Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I maybe if we get to, middle of next week and we don't have this information, we could flag you to let the rest of the committee know, but I feel fairly confident that between our professional networks and the election boards in the various counties, we would be able to pull this data together for the meeting on July 18th.
Okay, well then we'll just plan on that.
Yeah, and I can get Brian to give me some info and let him know that what it's for and why. And then we're gonna all give it to Lindsay,
Okay.
which will go to everybody, correct?
Yes,
All that comes from her.
yes, it needs to come from,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So do we need to vote on the postponing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Motion?
There's already a motion and a second.
we have a motion to postpone and then second, and that will be a postponement to the, well, I won't say the
July
next.
18th.
Pardon me?
July 18th.
July 18th. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, well, let's see.
Question,
Yes,
if we do away with the petitions, how does that reflect a write-in vote? I mean, cause that person is not getting the 100 supporters. He's not being
That's true.
checked for tax issues. How does that work then? I mean, I'm just.
point. I don't
That's
know.
a very good point.
Good point.
Have they
mean,
been
you
counted
still
in
allow
the
it.
past?
That's why I told you, I think
Oh.
several city attorneys have breathed a sigh of relief in the past because this issue is not contemplated in the city charter.
Or is that where the qualification part comes into play? Because remember, we have that language.
But yeah, but it doesn't say anything about a write-in. That says if somebody's running, if it's a write-in, that's a totally different. Maybe we need to add something. Thank you. I knew I'd forget that. I'd be getting on everybody else. And I don't know, maybe we need to go back and add something to that effect on write-ins. Because that is a loophole,
Right.
big loophole.
I don't know if they're automatically allowed
I looked into this a few months ago. I can find what I did on it. I don't remember
Okay.
off the top of my head. But, sorry.
Okay, that's
It's. I know it's not as simple as just a free for all. Anyone can write in, and now they're a candidate. They do have to comply with some rules, and I'm almost certain they can't avoid this delinquent tax rule either. But I can double check that.
What about, the question was the petition process?
The petition process? Yeah.
Right,
I'll double check that
Okay.
and find what I did on that.
okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I've got a quick question on the petition process. You made a mention, a comment earlier, when people sign a petition for someone to run for office, that they're only allowed to sign one petition for one candidate. Is that,
I believe so, I just read
I
that.
was curious about that because I didn't know that. And I've known people that say, well, I'm just signing a petition to allow them to run. I'm not saying I'm going to endorse them.
That's right.
But if they can only sign one,
What about an at-large candidate?
so, at the time you've got all 4 district councils going, and you're supposed to be in your district, but I was curious about that because I hadn't heard that before.
I think it says that 6-6. No, I'm sorry, it didn't say.
Well, maybe I misread that. Let's see. So mayor and council member at large require 250 registered qualified voters. District council member 100. Not more than one candidate for office may be nominated by the same petition.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's different than what I
That's different.
said.
So you can sign several because,
For that office,
for that office, yeah, okay.
not two candidates.
Because it would be tough if somebody had to go through and verify, okay, you signed this one, oh, she signed over here too, so which one do we count her for?
So I understand that language
Okay.
as well.
Okay, I was just curious.
Okay,
about-
yeah, I'm correct than what I
All right.
said. I misread that.
And I hadn't heard that before, and if it was true, I was gonna explain that to a few folks, but.
Okay. Okay, so we appreciate your work on 6.6. We're gonna probably not be able to, I don't know if we wanna vote on those changes or not at this point, or should we wait until?
I think we ought to
Come
wait,
back.
because
Yeah,
if we're gonna change primary, it's all gotta go back
Okay.
in.
So these are all going to be on hold until the 18th.
So do we
Well-
need to vote on this too, on holding this? or-
Let's just skip it without voting on it. I do think we can look at least part of the withdrawal section, which is 6.8. If anyone had any concerns with the way that's worded.
Yes. This
ahead.
addresses the order on which the, will appear on ballots. Is that correct?
Yes. 6.8?
Is that 6 point,
Yeah,
the
probably.
current 6.8 is what I'm
The current
calling it.
6.8.
Current
Okay, I'm
6.8.
sorry, I'm looking at the.
Yeah, I-
I'm looking
Current
at the-
6.8, not inclusive of the changes, is the order of names on ballots.
Okay. Gotcha.
okay, well, let's go back
Sorry.
to
6.7.
6.7 on the revised
Okay.
document. So that's withdrawal.
If I may, I will say that any reference to primaries in there was an error,
Right.
and that I should have taken it out.
I kind of had a question, and I don't know if this is maybe elsewhere in the charter, and I'm not recalling it. But what if there was a death or some other event that would disqualify a candidate between the general election or before the general election and after the time to withdraw. They're still on the ballot?
I'd have to look at that. I'm not for sure. I feel like I've seen it before also, but I don't remember. Or maybe I'm thinking of the general disqualification language that we talked about. But I could look closer at it.
So you're saying that if obviously a death would disqualify, like in comparison to the last cycle where DeLucci died and because she died right before certification, correct?
Right.
So this language would address if someone passed away, the next top vote getter would be, or are you talking about the procedure, what to do?
I guess what I was thinking of is after the date to withdraw, which actually did kind of happen in our last mayoral election because the mayor made the decision to no longer campaign. But it was too late for her to withdraw. So maybe
That happened, it changed a few different times.
right. So maybe my concern isn't.
No, I just was saying, is that what your question is because I was trying to compare it to the issue with Councilwoman DeLucci was, I think there was some moves to say what time of day she passed. I remember all the headlines about it.
Well, there was a lawsuit.
And so
There was a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, because it stands as they didn't withdraw her, and that's how she won.
Yeah.
But it was right when they certified, so she would have won. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Did we have a court judgment on that?
No, it was withdrawn.
The suit was withdrawn?
That second paragraph, the way I read it, it talks about between the primary and the general. If we don't have a primary election, that whole paragraph is moot.
Right.
So that's really one of those things we kind of need to wait until we see how the other part comes out before that. Or we tweak the wording.
Was the question about after they've been certified? Can you kind of
No,
clarify?
I mean, my question was,
Because the way this reads,
if the event, the disqualifying event happens let me look at my notes, before the general election, but after the withdrawal date, they stay on the ballot?
Yes.
the way this reads, there'd be no new election, and the surviving candidate would be the winner. So they would still be disqualified. If they're disqualified, I think that's different than withdrawing. There's a disqualifying event in which they would be removed, and the remaining candidate would be the remaining candidate.
Okay, so they're still on the ballot, they can still win, but the second highest vote getter would, when the other person on the
From
ballot.
the time the election took place versus being sworn in, correct?
Mechanically, I don't know if they would be left on the ballot or not. They'd be disqualified from being a candidate. There'd be a disqualifying event, death, incompetency, or some other disqualifying condition. And the way I understand it, and then they would just, the other candidate would be automatically declared the winner.
Like Senator Carnahan.
Right.
Governor Carnahan won that election and he beat the city attorney general several months before the election. It was a total plane crash.
Don't happen.
And he stayed on the ballot and won, and then the governor appointed his wife. I know all that people.
So it kind of depends on when the election board allows it to come off the ballot, right?
I guess so, yeah.
I did that with the Clintons, I defeated all that.
Well, I don't know if the wording that we currently have, if it doesn't cause any issues, then I'm fine with leaving it. Just trying to look at every possibility since we did have something come up.
Yeah.
In the last election.
We can come up with a couple options that would clarify. We come up with a couple of options that might clarify when or whether they would be removed from the ballot, or Would that address your
Yes.
concerns?
Does anyone else?
Like when you said on your past election on the mayor, didn't she withdraw afterwards? And was she on the ballot still? So
She
the
was on
ballots
the
had already
ballot.
been printed?
Yes,
Yeah, so too late at that time to take her off.
yeah.
'cause
I mean, we
ballots
know
had
that
already been printed.
happens.
Yeah, she just basically said, I'm not gonna campaign. And then 2 or 3 weeks went by, one news story, and she said she wasn't completely out of the right, all that crap took place, but that was
Like, I'm a little more concerned with if someone is
incapacitated.
adjudicated, I'm gonna use this term, adjudicated incompetent, which I think the court would probably agree with
Incompetent.
that. Or,
Competent's a big word, we have that
I said
filled
adjudicated,
everywhere.
that's a judge's order. Or dies.
Incapacitated, maybe, not incompetent, because that fits.
Some of the current ones.
You're from,
Okay, whatever
from
the
dog
legal
catcher
term
to
would
the White
be,
House.
just to avoid.
I did not want to remove that word, I totally get it.
Anyway, that's more the situation that I'd be concerned with.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right, anyone else have anything with 6.8 you wanna discuss? If not, I think we'll just hold on that. See if we do wanna change it and look at it again at the next meeting.
And the 18th is where we'll go over
Yeah,
primary versus petition with some information to share, correct?
Yes,
And this language.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next section, the current 6.9, in the current charter, 6.9, order of names on the ballot. I think this is an interesting situation for us to look at because the current language is sort of first come, first serve, first on the ballot. Which Mr. Walker kind of described in your memo to us, that has created some problems and some complaints because it could result in people camping out. I don't know. I remember when it used to be that way at Jackson County and people would sneak in to be first in the line. But it used to be by draw, names out of the hat or however. And so for some reason they changed it to this other method. My personal opinion is, at least on the first day of filing, it should be by lottery, whatever the correct term is for that. Which is what Blue Springs does, and it works very well. Only on the first day. Your thoughts on that?
Can you scroll that up?
I might add just a little more color commentary for the commission's benefit. So, yeah, this has gotten to be a pretty interesting process. People who will begin camping out the Friday night before the Monday event. We've had, reports of physical altercations out there, which worries me of if somebody were to get injured, is the city now liable? Because we've said this is the process for, getting signed up, and have we created this? We had some, I'm going to try to be very generic here for, the commission's benefit, but we had some sanitation issues of how people were using the restroom the last time around, which was obviously not great. So it's really just not a good process all the way around, and again, one that is pretty abnormal from what we see our peers doing who are employing this lottery system and not a who gets there first and wins the Survivor Island game.
Well, this is a solution to the primary question.
There you go, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hunger Games.
So do they do that for like the first day only, back?
Well, that's what.
Well, there's a date, right, that the filing begins,
Right.
and that's on a Monday.
Correct.
So they're usually showing up Friday evening and staying through that weekend. And I mean, they'll tag in and out, have people come and, step in for them. But yeah, they will spend about 48 to 72 hours up there.
But no, I guess I'm asking on the
Oh, and
lottery
then-
system,
Oh,
is it just for a one-day lottery?
yes,
after
just
that?
that first day. And then anybody that trickles in Tuesday, Wednesday, then you just go order after that. Yep.
If you could pull up the Blue Springs Charter 8.3.
I'm going to tell you what.
Yeah.
Or page count at the bottom doesn't reflect the actual page count.
We've gone too far.
Too far. Sorry, guys.
Okay, that section 8.3 is just one paragraph, and it deals with some other things in the paragraph. But starting with the second paragraph,
Clerk shall
Should
clearly
clearly designate where candidates shall form a line. Determine the order of filings, except that.
drawing determines the order which candidates' names appear on the ballot. Drawing shall be conducted so that each candidate or candidate's representative is provided by the state statutes shall draw a number in the random time. That's the one.
I believe this works pretty well.
I would say that covers it all, right?
That includes sanitation.
Yeah.
You can't make it up.
I mean, I've seen it on Friday after Thanksgiving and Taylor Swift tickets, but not to run for office.
I'd make a motion, we accept language as this type of language
Second,
to modify.
ballot name placement.
Right.
To adopt at least a portion of this language or the entire paragraph? We've already dealt with the first sentence.
Right. City clerk shall clearly
The second
A
part
formal
about
line
where
to
they
the
shall
clerk.
designate to form a line, determine the order of filings.
So that means they don't stand up there and race to the counter.
To me, that, they
Okay.
just say on that first day prior to 5 o'clock, we're gonna do this lottery. After that, they'll, it's in the order they file. I don't know that we need that line
Clerk shall be
Okay.
conducted.
in there.
So just start with where it says, in the case of candidates, start it with that.
Right here.
Or just
Okay,
say
so
candidates who file a declaration with the city clerk prior to
Okay.
5 PM on the first day of filing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
There with that, about the fourth line there, just say, candidates who file a declaration of candidacy, start there somewhere. Prior to 5 PM on the first day and so on. That part about clearly designate the line and all that, that's just a line for the bathroom, I think. Is it really doesn't do any good for the filing with what they've got in there.
And then the rest is good. The drawing shall be conducted so that each candidate and candidate's representative shall provide, as provided by state statutes, shall draw a number in the random time of the filing.
So start here, candidates who file declaration of candidacy, and
Yeah.
then go how far?
The rest of it's good.
The whole thing? Okay.
Except where it says Blue Springs. We're gonna
Yeah.
state
Well,
it.
let's see how many of them read it, they may file.
That's true. That mayor could get more votes out there.
Yeah.
Do we need this language at the end about the notice of election, the publishing it in the newspaper? Do we have that somewhere else?
I think that's mandated by the.
Yeah.
Especially if we don't have newspapers anymore.
I'm sure the notice requirement is statutory. I would.
That is.
I would assume it
Yeah.
is.
Publicly noticed.
So do you think that needs to be in this or not?
I don't think it would hurt to be in here.
Okay. So the rest of that paragraph except change was.
You might want to check with the city clerk to see how she does. It may not be newspapers, to your point, it may be on a
Public notice.
public website or something.
It does say that, or website, the displayed in the city newspaper or a Independence
Or the-
website.
I know right now it's still newspapers of general circulation.
Okay.
that could change.
Is that per state statute type of little clause in there? I don't know.
That is referring to a candidate's representative. I think that's what that means.
No, 6.9, isn't it?
Oh, thank you.
She knew that, she was just testing.
You are paying attention. Oh, it keeps going back to.
I can barely text very good, let alone all. Sometimes I get the wrong number while I'm out. How exactly do they draw these numbers?
The candidate draws the number
Out of what,
out of
hat
a,
or
yes, a
literally
bowl.
hat?
Mhm.
Put it on a bowl,
Is there
hat?
any,
Something.
is there any chance for any
Bingo balls or something?
confusion, manipulation,
I mean, I haven't
errors?
heard of any, but that might be something we could check
Okay.
with the city clerks and see how that works.
I think
Is
that,
there any chance for fraud on it?
I think it's standard, seriously.
I mean, the
though.
statute allows for it.
Yeah, and the candidates are witnesses, and they usually find somebody neutral, might be the window, just so nobody's specific person, or they may. We all choose Mark, because he's not, whatever, and then they just go out 1, 2, that's what we do if there's multiple candidates. Just find a neutral person or someone that all agree to, and it's a hat or a bucket,
I mean, that sounds very
simple.
simple, but I just have this feeling that there's a chance for a problem there.
I can see, the only problem I see is the candidate seeing that there's a problem, or presuming there's a problem.
Right.
That's gonna be who you have to deal with.
Yeah,
So if they're fighting in the line, they're gonna be fighting at the bowl.
Yeah, and what we always did was, that if there was more than 2 candidates, was everybody agreed on the size of the sheet, and then you wrote the candidate on it, so it wasn't like he knew this one was longer, shorter, folded in half. And then everybody, but I mean, if you got 8 candidates, they're the exact same size, folded into 4. That way nobody could. that's
These
what
candidates are drawing numbers.
Yes,
So again, yeah, you're right, they should all be,
that's how we've
I
always done it,
trust
where
our city
what you're
clerks to do
saying
that.
is everybody, this is what we agreed on, there's none longer or shorter, none with a fold in it, and it was all the same.
Any concern with the city? Mr. Walker, do you have any concerns with that?
No, I think that's much
Okay.
more efficient.
Mr. Head? Okay. Anyone else?
Motion to, you got a motion and a second, right?
Don't remember. Lindsay, did we have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Casey and then Ms. Craig.
Okay, so we have motion and a second. Any further discussion on that change? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think that passes.
Aye.
Thank you.
It's like a talking dot, it just gets bigger every time she does it.
Okay, so we're gonna
I jumped that night when the phone rang.
skip over 6:10 till we make our final decision again. 6:11, voting at general, and I'm talking about the current charter. 6:11, voting at general election. I didn't have any recommendations on this. Does anyone?
Has equal lots.
So this is the handout sheet 611.
No, I'm looking at the actual
Okay.
charter. Let me look at the 6:11.
The voting in general election.
Yes.
Oh, that describes what the ballot will look like, correct?
So on the revision that Mr. Head gave us, it's 6.9.
Yeah.
Other than that, there were no changes to it.
Okay. Anyone have any changes you want to make to that?
What, is there something somewhere else that has to do with breaking a tie
Down below,
down below?
down below on the new 611 talks about tie vote.
614.
Oh, okay,
You don't see.
sorry, didn't get far enough ahead. I thought we had dealt with that previously, but I missed that. Okay.
Okay, if there's no changes on that one, we'll go on to 6.12. And I'm talking current charter number. Canvassing returns at primary, well, won't deal with that right now. 6.13, canvassing returns at general election. I think the timing on that was not
We changed
valid
something in there.
anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in the letter from the election board.
Sworn in, something.
So the letter that we got from the Jackson County Election Board says that the Board of Elections is required by state to certify within 14 days. Is canvassing still a valid method? I don't even know really what that means.
I don't either. I assumed. I was, I wasn't here last week, and Jeremy didn't say to
Okay.
address canvassing, so I can look into it more, and we'll definitely change that 10 days to 14 days if that's what
Okay.
the.
Do you have that letter?
I don't.
All right, well, it's out there. It's the statute is 115.507. I have an extra copy if you want it. So the only change I would see making to this is to find out what canvassing means. Is that a term that should stay in there, or should it be changed? And then the date, the timing of the election board certification. Anyone else have anything for that?
Does canvassing mean collecting them?
I don't know.
Counselor?
Maybe got a canvas bag.
Back
Where
in
the votes
olden
are stuffed
times.
into the canvas bag?
In Article 6, under 6.2, it looks like we had changed some wording about if the mayor-elect or council member-elect within 1 month of certification of the election. We talked about we changed something. That's the only thing I can remember that we talked about. It's a little different than what it says here about within 10
Okay.
days.
Yeah, we went back to 14 days, right?
Yeah,
So they'd be able to take effect earlier.
Yeah, I just think
Or be
we,
seated earlier, right?
yeah, we just need to make sure that we don't have a date that's different than what the state
Okay.
Yep.
law requires in that.
I'm sorry. Which section were you just talking about?
6.2.
6.
Yeah, the revised 6.2 mentions in there about that, so just keep the wording consistent.
Is there any, does the city, declare the results of the election in any way?
We receive the results from Jackson County. The city clerk will receive a certified count, and then the council will vote to certify the election results at the meeting that follows whenever the clerk receives those official results.
Okay.
I think according to Google, the definition we're looking for is canvassing is to obtain.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you go around from to the polling places and gather them.
I think Mr. Frakes is right. My search looked the same, that it's making sure every valid ballot has been collected and accounted for.
Okay. Okay, we'll go on to the next section, the votes, tie votes.
The what?
Tie votes, not the votes.
Yeah.
Eyes.
We're just there. Oh, there's 6.14. The case of because of the tie, the election shall be determined fairly by lot among the candidates' time. In a public meeting, casting.
So we're back to casting of lots.
Previously, I had changed casting of lots to drawing of straws just to give it less of the Old Testament flavor. So I don't know if you want to stick with drawing straws or some other random way of selecting things.
I would do as simple as possible for what we're trying to accomplish.
We used drawing of straws. We got rid of casting of lots and used drawing of straws. I think we should be
Yeah.
consistent.
Pick a number between 1 and 4.
Unless there's another way anyone would like to discuss handling tie votes. Coin flip?
What is, I guess my question is, what is a tie? 50% exactly? 50-50 or?
450 to 450 is a
It's
tie.
Excuse me?
450 to 450 is a tie.
Oh, we're talking about percentages or numbers?
numbers.
Numbers? So numbers are important here, but they're not important
Well, this
for
doesn't-
the vote.
this
I'm just
doesn't
trying
even
to,
say-
Absolutely they are. That's what
They
the
are, okay.
primary
It
Okay.
just says in case of failure to elect a mayor or council member, it doesn't say if it's percentages or numbers. That's subject to interpretation.
oh, that's what that is. Oh, okay. Thank you.
I sound like a lawyer. Thank you.
Okay, any changes to this other than using drawing of straws instead of casting of lots? Should we vote on that? Motion to amend, to change it?
So moved.
I think I'm in favor of changing it. I don't think
draw
it's
straws?
fair. Yeah, I'm in favor of drawing straws.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So, isn't it the same?
Yeah, we're just changing it, casting of lots to drawing straws.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Thank you. 6:15, last paragraph. Special elections, submission of proposals at elections. I don't have any changes for this. Does anyone else? Okay, let's leave that as is, and now we're ready to move on to Article 7.
I have a real quick question.
Sure.
And it's just kind of in the back of my mind, I keep coming up with during the last election where, Councilman DeLucy passed away, and it was so close from the certification, or was it certified and all. Do we want to address that somewhere in the charter to make sure that we don't have to wait for, if God forbid we have another primary and then we go with another general election? Is there some way that we could address that if you don't, let's say a number of days, if you don't officially take the oath or whatever, that we would
Let's see. Well, we did that
revert
for
to some other
mayor.
way of selecting that position? I'm just spitballing.
Mhm.
I thought that we addressed it in the code
We did
that said if there is, for mayor, I thought
We
we
did
did
change
it
it
for
for
mayor or council, that the council could fulfill by their powers. If it's, past a certain amount of time out of a general. Then we are, yeah,
It is, it says the mayor-elect or a council member-elect
right.
within 1 month of certification of the election or thereafter, or his or her office shall become vacant and the vacancy shall be filled as other vacancies are filled.
That's right. We went over that,
Okay.
mayor or council.
But that would mean that you'd have to have the special elections. Is that what we're saying?
If it was.
But that's how other positions are filled, is you have a special primary and then you have a special general election, right?
Doesn't it go down there, if it's so far from a general, doesn't it finish? Didn't we word it where if it's within a certain amount of, like a year from an odd, something like that, didn't we go that deep?
Well, in this case, then it would be right at the election, so it would be required a
To be
special
filled
election.
to be filled by the council, I
Mhm.
believe.
Yeah, what I read you stopped, but it says vacancies are filled, period.
Lindsay, did you find that section that he's talking about that we worked on?
Which section is that?
That was in 6.2.
Okay.
About halfway down.
I've got it pulled up.
Yeah, that top paragraph on the right is what I just read about, with the 1 month of certification of the elections, or his or her office shall become vacant, the vacancy shall be filled as other vacancies are filled.
So then the question is, how are other vacancies filled?
No, I know how the vacancies are filled. What I'm saying is, are we looking at possibly doing something bold and saying, filling that position differently than that was in previously in the charter?
We went down to if it fell.
Well, then we go on to 6.4, we talk about, if, we don't have somebody, the council member can be asked to stay on until they fill it.
Yeah, if they're alive.
I didn't say that.
No, I know.
Do you feel like we haven't covered every possibility?
I mean, that's pretty obvious.
We can't.
If you can't take the position in 30 days, then you're automatically gonna fill it the way you always filled it. I'm saying, would this commission be willing to look at a different way of doing it? That's what I'm saying.
Well, we were talking on what we talked about earlier tonight, in, what was it, section 6, I guess. We were talking about filling vacancies. And I think the way it says, the way we fill vacancies, with the new way we have it, take care of that problem. I think I need a cupcake, sugar's wearing off. But I mean, we talked earlier about filling vacancies and.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that cover what you're referring to?
To serve until successors are elected and qualified.
Yeah, we said that in what we did in 6, or 5, I'm sorry.
I thought we addressed that, maybe I'm
In
wrong.
a meeting in the council under its direction to determine which of the 2 council members at large, which terms are expiring, shall continue to serve.
Yeah,
Provided that there is only 1 council member at large at that time, he or she shall continue to serve at least 2 days. Notice shall be given to the 2 council members at large.
So we've at least addressed that way, by letting them continue to serve the ones that are in there.
And was it that way before?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's black. It's not, wasn't crossed out. I think it's designed, so,
Did we handle it that way in this, during this particular situation?
no. Well, didn't, yeah, because they held, that seat was vacant until a special election. Because wouldn't it, as it's described now, wouldn't it have been the guy that was there, the council was there, the way it's described now, would have stayed until DeLucci's
Well,
replacement.
she was the at-large person that was running for reelection
Yeah, and won,
and won.
and it was contested on the day of certification
Right,
due to her passing.
right.
So, this would describe that the seat holder would stay
Right, but if the seat
until the
holders,
special election,
if the seat holder's the one that
and
is
there's another 12
impacted,
people around.
yeah.
My memory's not that good.
Because they don't term out. They can run as many times as they want, isn't that
Right.
correct? How many times they can win.
And I know we're trying to cover all these contingencies. Had that not just happened, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion
Right.
because it's such an oddity the way it happened.
There's a whole lot covered on that whole issue. There's way more going on than just that at that time.
Yeah.
But it is important too, because it did happen.
Well, from memory, we discussed all that when we were looking at section 2.8, didn't we?
2-8?
2.8, about what would occur in the event of someone not being able to take their office or whatever reason that we discussed whether someone would be appointed or we would have special elections. Didn't we do all that? Remind all
Council
of
member
that,
vacancies right there.
Lindsay, can you
Mayor,
enlarge it a little?
didn't we?
Yeah, so a vacancy in the office of mayor shall be filled by election in the next regular, that's what I meant was the next regular, I remember, yeah, Missouri election calendar in accordance with the state law. A council member, the council member by a majority vote of all of its remaining members shall appoint a qualified person as defined in section 2.2 to fill the vacancy until the next, yeah, that's what I remember, it was about, if it's, yeah, until the next municipal, so you're not having a special.
Is that what we're talking about, or am I off
Excuse me.
base?
No, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's described in 2.8 what happens. A mayor vacancy or a council member vacancy.
Didn't we have a special primary and a special general election?
You
Did we?
did, but this changes it.
Excuse me, sir?
I said, this changes it now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The way-
Yeah, it's described there, and I thought it had something to do with the municipal. And that language is there. What I was thinking I remember was filled with the next regular municipal. That way you're not having to do a primary and a special. So as it runs in its cycle, if you're having one, it's there anyway.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, yes, thank you.
It was a good exercise for us.
Sorry for the senior moment.
No, that's a good point though, too. 'Cause
Well, time has flown.
it has.
It has.
So I think we'll wait for, to start Article 7 at the next meeting, and we'll also hopefully have some information and can come back to.
Anybody else's birthday
6?
where we can get some more treats?
It's all wore off in here.
Okay, so under other business, Lindsay, our next meeting is?
July 18th.
Here, that's my
Here.
birthday. How come I said?
One of many. Yeah.
Is there any other business
I'll
from
have to-
any member?
I'll have to zoom in on that one. I will be out of the state.
Okay,
So I'll try to zoom in.
You'll be able to participate, but from a distance.
I want to
Now,
participate.
that's the day we brought up about the primary.
I know.
Are you sure you don't?
if you're unable to zoom in, something happens, let us know. I mean, we'll know, but, you know, if you wanna be here when that vote is taken.
Yeah.
don't have a problem with
I'll
that.
get some directions.
I'll
from
send you a Teams.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? None. Thank you.
Did I bring that box of cupcakes or did you?
There is one extra take home.
I might steal another one or two.
Yeah, we got Colorado Springs.
My wife will.
3 days. Colorado.
But now.
Please take them with you.
Yeah. You gotta figure it
Here's
out.
the cookie box too.
Yeah, Colorado Springs is
This might
still
actually be easier for you to
high.
put.
It's around the miles. I've been.
I get John. He's represented me before. Oh, I just got my board of legalization here.
Tried
And he'll get to Lake of the Ozark that day. So. I'm gonna do
I
some
love it.
Postpone it. Can you get one postponed?
We're supposed to have maybe.
Can I steal one here, please?
Yeah, which one you want?
That one right here. Thank you.
First time,
Maybe
second,
we
third,
need to-
fifth.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, buddy.
They're resolving. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go to our-
I did.
What do you want?
Well, you just go down and sit and steal it.
My son's.
What is it? What's the time?
It's over the taxes. The taxes.
Oh,
You don't have that problem.
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna-
deal with, you know, trying to get
I set them up side by side last year.
You know, where I live.
That model.